Hello and welcome to Impact Tuition. In our last video, we did an overview of the ICA Ghana Strategic Case Study Syllabus. We understood that strategic management is a process and involves strategy identification, strategy selection, and strategy implementation. Strategy identification can also be called strategic position, strategy selection, strategic choices or options, and then strategy implementation we can also refer to as strategy in action. In this video, we discuss the first key issue under strategic position, which is purpose and expectation. Strategic position has three key issues: purpose and expectation, the business environment, and strategic capabilities. We will discuss purpose and expectation in this video. Purpose basically talks about the entity's reasons for existence. Reasons for existence. To come out with a purpose of an entity, you would have to go through the hierarchy of aims and plans. The hierarchy of aims and plans will help come out with the vision, mission, the goals, which are broad general intentions. When the goals have been established, we come out with specific intentions, which are the objectives. And objectives should be SMART, where SMART means the objective has to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Then strategy, and then the plan, which could be tactical and operational. We will spend a little time on vision and mission. Vision talks about where do we want to go? What do we want to be? Vision is a coherent description of a preferred future. Vision looks into the future and will help the entity determine where they would want to be in the next, say, 20, 25, 15, 10 years. So vision doesn't talk about the now. It looks into the future and helps the entity position itself in the future where it really wants to be or where it wants to go. Let's look at what constitutes an effective vision statement. Because it is something that relates to the future, it has to be inspiring in such a way that employees or everybody in the organization can work towards it. It has to bring out the best in people in the organization to get the entity to that position in the future. It should paint a clear picture. The vision should be clear and not vague. Anyone who reads it should understand this is where the entity wants to be and should be motivated enough to work towards that. It should be desirable. The vision should be something everybody in the organization wants. And when that is the case, they will work together to achieve that. Vision should be unique. There are a lot of entities doing the same thing. So, what will bring one entity out? How to make one entity stand out among the rest? Your vision should be unique. Vision shouldn't be the same as what everybody has. Yours should be unique. It should be focused. It should be feasible. Vision that isn't feasible means that people are working for something which is not achievable. So the vision should be one that is really, really achievable, such that people will know that, oh, they are not working for nothing, but they are rather working against the attainment of something. And then the vision should be easy to communicate. You shouldn't have a problem letting the employees or people in the organization know what the vision is. It should be very easy to understand in order to motivate people to achieve it. So these are some characteristics of an effectively worded vision statement. Let's discuss something on a mission or the mission statement. A mission statement is an enduring statement of purpose that distinguishes one organization from other similar enterprises. It is a declaration of an entity's reason for being. The mission statement asks the question, what do we do? Or what is our business? Why are we doing this? And the mission statement will help achieve the vision of the entity. Now let's discuss some relevance of a mission statement. The mission statement helps stakeholders understand the entity and what it seeks to achieve. The mission statement ensures unanimity of purpose. The mission statement provides a basis for allocating resources, gets employees to identify with the purpose and direction, and the mission statement facilitates the translation of objectives into work activities. Let's look at some characteristics of a mission statement. A mission statement should be easy to understand. It should have no commercial term. A mission statement should be distinctive or unique. It should be flexible to changes, and it should not be open-ended. That is, it should have a target. This is all for purpose. We now shift our attention to expectation. Expectation is about stakeholders. So the focus of our discussion will be on stakeholders. Stakeholders are persons or groups of individuals interested in what the entity is doing and what it seeks to achieve. Classification of stakeholders. Stakeholders can be classified into main stakeholders and other stakeholders, and internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. For the main and other stakeholders, we focus more on their expectations. And for the internal and external stakeholders, we focus more on the sources of their power or what influences their power. Now, let's discuss something about the main stakeholders. Main stakeholders include the shareholders, directors, and senior management. The duties of the shareholders is to elect directors, and their expectation is growth, either in their shares or dividends. That is what the shareholders expect. So they expect growth from the entity. Directors have the duty of exercising leadership because they are elected by shareholders to manage and run the organization. And their expectation is personal advancement, status, and then very, very good remuneration. Senior management, their duties are captured in their employment contract, but they also have a similar expectation like the directors, which includes personal advancement such as status and higher remuneration and things like that. Other stakeholders. The other stakeholders include customers, the general public, creditors, and employees. Customers are interested in value for their money at the right price at the right place. So this is the expectation of most customers. The general public expect operations to be safe for the environment. That is generally what the general public expects. And then creditors or suppliers, they expect payment on time and are interested in the survival of the entity. Employees as well are interested in the survival of the entity and the security of their jobs. So these are basically what they expect from the entity. Internal stakeholders, we remember that we mentioned for internal and external stakeholders, the focus will be on the sources of their power or what influences their power. For internal stakeholders, their power can normally be obtained from knowledge and skill, because internal stakeholders are those stakeholders who are within the entity. Now, an employee with high knowledge and skill in something or in an operation will definitely have power. Position in the management hierarchy, those at the very top of management have power as compared to those at the bottom of the management hierarchy. Then the ability to exercise discretion, and then personal attributes. Someone can have the ability to organize, ability to communicate, and such abilities will give the person some power in the organization. So these are some of the sources or things that influence the power of internal stakeholders. For external stakeholders, we can also look at the knowledge and skill. Now, external stakeholders are those stakeholders who are outside the organization in question, but their activities affect the entity. You can have an external stakeholder who has knowledge and skill, and that knowledge and skill is important to the activities of the organization, and as such will give that external stakeholder power. We can also discuss level of involvement in activities. Some external stakeholders are highly involved in the activities of the entity, and that gives them power. Level of dependence. The entity can be very dependent on an external stakeholder, and that will give that external stakeholder some level of power. Laws and regulation. The regulators check the activities of the entity and make sure it is in line with their regulation, and this give the regulators power to affect the activities of their entity. Having understood the expectations and what influences the power of stakeholders, we bring our attention to stakeholder mapping. Stakeholder mapping involves the use of models to determine the real or potential interest or influence of stakeholders. The stakeholder mapping is used by directors for decision making relating to stakeholders and how they will respond to the threat or potential interest of the stakeholder. The applicable model is the Mendelow Stakeholder Matrix. Since we have internal and external stakeholders, the Mendelow Matrix has two things: their importance and the position and importance matrix, and the power and interest matrix. The position and importance matrix is for analyzing our internal stakeholders, and the power and interest matrix is for analyzing the external stakeholders. So we'll take them in turns to understand how they work. Position and importance matrix, which is for our internal stakeholders. Now, this is how the position and importance matrix looks like. We have importance at the top, and then position on the left. And the importance could be low or high, and then the position oppose or support. So the internal stakeholder could be in a position to support or oppose, and the importance could be high or low. Now, when we have an internal stakeholder who is in a position to oppose, but the importance is low, such a stakeholder is problematic. The person or that internal stakeholder doesn't have a high position, doesn't have a high importance in the organization, but is in a position to oppose. So such person is problematic, or such an internal stakeholder is problematic. When the internal stakeholder is in a position to oppose and has a high importance in the organization, say the CEO, then that internal stakeholder is antagonistic. The internal stakeholder has a high importance in the organization and is in a position to oppose. Such a stakeholder is antagonistic. Where the internal stakeholder has low importance and is in a position to support, that internal stakeholder is a low priority stakeholder, because the importance is low, and whether you support or you oppose doesn't really matter. But you are in a position to support, then low priority. Then the last one, the person has, or the internal stakeholder has a high importance in the organization and is in a position to support. Such a stakeholder is a supporter. So this is all about the power and importance matrix. We classify stakeholders based on a combination of their position to oppose or support and then their level of importance, whether high or low. Next, let's look at the response or management to this combination of position and importance. Where the stakeholder is problematic, having a position to oppose and then of low importance in organization, the response or management is to try to win them over. Where the stakeholder is antagonistic, having a position to oppose and of high importance, the management or response is to find a compromise so everybody becomes satisfied and then you get the thing or the job done. Find a compromise. Where the entity is, where the stakeholder is a supporter, you find ways to maintain their support because that internal stakeholder is in a position to support and of high importance in the organization. This is it for position and importance matrix. We look at the power and interest matrix, which is for external stakeholders. Power and interest matrix. It also looks the same as the position and importance matrix, but we have interest at the top and then power on the left. The interest could be high or low, and the power could be weak or strong. It doesn't really matter where you put the interest or the power, but make sure the combination is right. Where the external stakeholder has weak power and the interest is low, the response is to monitor the external stakeholder, and then we use minimal effort to do that. Where we have an external stakeholder with high interest but low power, all we do is to keep them informed. So they always know what is going on in the organization because the interest of that stakeholder is high but doesn't have any power to influence the activities. So the management is to keep them informed. Where the external stakeholder has strong power but low interest, like the regulators, their power is very, very strong, but sometimes, okay, not all regulators, but some of them are not really interested in what the entity is doing, but their power is very strong. All you do is to keep them satisfied. An external stakeholder has strong power but low interest in the activities of the entity. Keep them satisfied. And finally, where the interest of the external stakeholder is high and the power is strong, you keep them involved in every activity of the entity. And that is how you manage external stakeholders based on the combination of their power and interest. And this brings us to the discussion on purpose and expectation. Let's look at the lesson summary. In this lesson, purpose and expectation, we've discussed purpose, which talks about why the entity is in existence. And to do that, we use the hierarchy of aims and plans to understand the purpose of the entity. From there, we talked about expectation. Under that, we understood that expectation is basically about stakeholders. So we discussed the classification of stakeholders. And then we use the stakeholder mapping as a tool to determine the real or potential interest or influence of stakeholders. And we also understood that the stakeholder mapping is a tool used by directors for decision making about stakeholders. We applied the Mendelow Matrix and we understood there are two of them, the position and importance matrix for internal stakeholders and power and interest matrix for external stakeholders. See you in our next video and thanks for watching.